This video is brought to you by the wonderful members of my Patreon. Hey DreamChasers, it's JC, and this is part 2 of my 4-part video series about how to start taking commissions. In case you missed it, you can watch part 1 here, and I was so shocked I did that on the first take and didn't guess. Anyway, I just messed it up, made it worse. The first video covered stuff like pricing, putting together a portfolio, finding clients, and knowing whether or not you're ready. This week, we're gonna go over some technical businessy stuff, like how to write policies and contracts and why you need those things. I'm also gonna include a link to a sample contract in the description. It might not work for your needs exactly, so feel free to edit it. It's just meant to be sort of a boilerplate starting point sort of guide. All right, so let's just dive in. Alright, so you might not actually feel like you need to write official policies because, you know, you're really casual and you're just an artist and a free spirit and that's like very stuffy for like stuffy businessy people and stuffy business clothes with attaché cases who get away with day drinking because they're doing it out of a fancy decanter. But I think it's important to realize that it's not about being, you know, uptight and rigid. It's about being honest and open and clear. You want to make sure that everybody's expectations are understood, and that's why having written policies is very helpful and very important. It makes you a better communicator, it makes sure everybody's on the same page. It's open and honest, and it's gonna save you a lot of headache in the long run. And here's the thing, it is a very professional thing to do, but guess what? You are a professional. Just by the nature of getting paid for making artwork, that makes you a professional artist. So having those clear policies is going to help you look more professional, and it's also going to reduce miscommunications and make everybody happier. So I strongly recommend that you have a written list of policies that you can give to your client. That way, if anything comes up or there's any confusion later, you can both refer back to it very easily and know exactly what to expect. And I want to point out, and I mentioned this in the first video, that a lot of this stuff is really pertaining to private commissions. Your policies might not apply to a work for hire situation or something where you're under NDA. That's a whole other ball of wax. This stuff is specifically about a one-on-one private commission with an individual person that they're most likely going to use for personal use. All right, so let's talk about all of the things that your list of policies should cover. Number 1, your payment policy. Meaning, how do you accept payment and when is it due? Do you take Venmo, PayPal, cash? Is full payment due up front or just a 50% deposit? And a quick note, please make sure that you take some kind of payment up front, even if it's just a percentage as a deposit, because it's really easy to do a bunch of work for a commission and then have someone change their mind partway through and cancel, and you'll never get anything even though you did some work already. So having your customer pay something up front will prevent you from doing work for free, and it'll also make sure that they're serious about the commission and they're ready to commit to it. Because sometimes people reach out, they're not quite ready, and you might not realize that. You start work, and that's just kind of a mess. So some kind of payment up front, please. Okay, next, your refund and cancellation policy. Do you offer refunds if your client wants to cancel? And what do you do if you've already started the work? My policy is that if someone wants to cancel during the early kind of sketch planning phases, they can, but I'll give them a 50% refund. However, if they want to cancel after that, I don't offer a refund because I've already done a lot of work. Number 3, your policy on edits and revisions. It's really helpful to have a clear policy on how many edits and revisions that you offer as part of your pricing, because sometimes clients request a lot of changes and add a ton of work. Sometimes they ask for things that were even outside of the scope of the original agreement, and sometimes clients will ask for tiny changes, but instead of one email with like 5 or 10 changes, they just keep sending them to you, so it takes up a lot of time. You're opening the file and you're making a little change, sending it back, then making another little change. So I usually refer to it as a round of revisions. So you usually get like 3 rounds of revisions in kind of the early kind of planning phases with my commissions. So I want you to give me as many of those details at once, so when I sit down to work on it, I can do all of the things you asked for instead of, 10 things over the course of a week, because otherwise you can end up with hours and hours of work added to the commission, and it's gonna be not really worth your time anymore. You're gonna be making way less than minimum wage. And at a certain point, you just have to charge for that many changes. Of course, you can't spring that on a client though. You have to make it clear. They have to expect if there's gonna be an extra fee. Because, from their perspective, they paid a lot of money for this commission. They want it to be perfect. But from your perspective, you need to make a fair hourly wage for your time, and it's not reasonable to have this endless commission, right, until they're happy. That's why I always include some kind of policy about revisions, and I also mention it when I'm negotiating that, like, okay, this is my price and this is what it includes, this many revisions. I try to make that clear. Another important thing to cover in your policies is copyright and ownership. A lot of people assume that when they pay for a commission that they own the copyright to the artwork, but without having that in writing, you probably don't. The artist still created the work, and legally they own the rights to it unless they transfer those rights to you. This is kind of a controversial topic, but I think it's fair that the artist owns the right to their work unless otherwise stated. Now, obviously I'm an artist, so I'm a little biased, but here's my logic. In my first video, I outlined how you set your pricing for your work, and in a lot of cases, when you factor everything in, artists aren't making a ton of money per piece that they draw. A lot of times they're making minimum wage if they're lucky. So if a client owns that work that they made and gets to sell it and make more money and profit off of that, and the artist barely made anything for it hourly, I feel like that's kind of not fair to not give the artist another dime, if you're going to be making all this money off of it. So considering how little I think artists make generally from personal commissions, I think it is kind of fair. I think if you're expecting to hire an artist and own the work, then you kind of have to pay a premium for that, the way a company, I'm going to say would here, but let's be honest, the word is should. A company should do that. They don't always. I think artists get exploited a lot. That's a whole other conversation. But the point being, if you want to own something, you have to pay a little extra to own it. So yeah, I feel like that kind of trade-off, it deserves a little bit of extra compensation. Like if I'm going to give you the rights to my work and you can potentially make a limitless amount of money off of it, I should get paid a little bit more and then transfer you the rights for that fee. So if that's the case, if someone wants to own the rights to something, my recommendation is to charge a little bit more, even just an extra percentage, 20%, 30%, on top of whatever your original commission price was. But that's up to you, whatever you think that's worth. But either way, at that point, you should probably have it all in writing, which we'll get to a little bit later when we talk about contracts. Another important thing to make clear in your policies is that you reserve the right to post examples of your work on social media. If you plan to stream it, you should probably let them know that as well. Sometimes people want to keep their commissions private, they're a surprise, or it's just very personal. So you'll have to negotiate that with them. I usually charge a little bit more for that because I'm losing that benefit of, it's not content for my stream anymore. It's not something I can use to promote myself. And so to me, I feel like the trade-off there is I want to be compensated a little bit more for something that I have to kind of hide like that. Similar to how if you were working with a company and you'd be signing an NDA or, something that you can't share, you expect those jobs to pay a decent amount, right? To be kind of more professional pricing, or I guess industry pricing, I'm not sure. And finally, you can include your personal boundaries in your policies, meaning things you won't draw or behavior you won't accept. So for example, you might have things like no porn, no mechs, nothing illegal. If you're a dick, I reserve the right to cancel. Stuff like that. Okay, so let's talk about contracts. If you're working for a company, they probably already have a contract drawn up, so you don't have to worry about it. Well, you do have to worry about it. Make sure you read it and understand what it says. But what I mean to say is you don't have to write one yourself. So the question is, do you need a contract for a private commission? Well, some people will tell you, yes, you always do. And honestly, those people are hecking smart. You should listen to them. But, if you like to play a little fast and loose with commissions, you might be able to get away with not having a contract for a lot of smaller gigs. I usually don't for something that's like $50 and it's something I can do in less than a week, but there are some circumstances where I prefer to have a contract. So Here are the circumstances that I absolutely recommend having a contract for. Any gigs that cost over $200. Once you have that kind of money on the line, it's a good idea to start having things in writing. I get why for a $25 gig, that you can bang out in 2 hours, but once you start investing double-digit hours into something, it's worth the extra time to put all of that into writing. If someone wants to own the copyright to the work, put that in writing. It's the best way to just legally cover everyone's bases, make sure you're all in agreement about who owns the work. If someone offers to pay you in future royalties or sales, put that in writing. Have them spell out exactly what percentage of the profits you'll get. Also, take a down payment because very, very rarely are you working with the next J.K. Rowling. That'd be great. I hope you are, and I hope you get that Harry Potter money, but it's not very likely, so take a down payment. If you agree to work for royalties, get something. If you're agreeing to accept the payment after the work has been completed, rather than up front, normally I advise against that, but if you're doing something for a Kickstarter project that's relying on crowdfunding, you might want to make an exception and take the payment later. Just make sure the people you're working with are reputable. Alright, now that you know that you definitely 100% need a contract, what kinds of things should the contract include? Well, this could depend a lot based on the project, but here's some basics to include. Number 1, the date the contract goes into effect. 2, the names of the parties involved, i.e. the client and the artist. 3, statement of work. This includes a description of the work being done, the deliverables, meaning drawings, files, etc., the timeline for when they'll be delivered, who is approving the work, and the details about what is and isn't included. 4, final due date. 5, credits. Depending on what the project is, the artist may wish to be credited. 6, grant of rights. You can state whether you're granting full copyright or a limited license to use the work. 7, reservation of rights. If you want to keep the rights to your sketches or anything not used in the final artwork, make that clear. 8, royalties, if applicable. This is where you would outline your percentage of royalties and all of those details. 9, promotion. It's a good idea to add a clause that allows you to use your work for self-promotional purposes, even if you are giving the client the copyright. 10, payment. List the amount due, when it's due, all the details around payment. 11, revisions. Include the amount of revisions the client can request as well as an hourly rate if they exceed that amount. 12, cancellation. Your policy on how to handle refunds and ownership of the work in the event that the client wants to cancel. 13, warranty. This is just like the part where you say, yeah, I made this and I didn't steal anything and I'm not going to be an asshole. Your contract might include other things depending on the specifics of the project, but this is generally what I use. I'm not a lawyer, so this isn't legal advice, and this is honestly cobbled together from hours of research and other templates I found, and I just kind of repurposed it for my needs, and now I'm sharing it with you. If you want something sound, talk to an actual lawyer. Hire someone to draft something solid for you. They'll probably add in clauses about, if there's a court case, which state would it happen in, and all this legal jargon that is confusing as hell because that's how lawyers do. But, if you want to protect yourself, that's a good idea. I personally don't have that kind of money, so I'm just sort of winging it. I haven't had any issues yet. And hopefully you'll never be in the position where you actually have to take someone to court, but having a contract is just in everyone's best interest. Generally speaking, someone who isn't willing to sign a contract or is offended that you'd ask them to sign a contract isn't someone you want to work with. That's a red flag, and you should run far, far away and never look back. Anyway, that's it for this video. It's a little bit shorter than the last one, thankfully. Stay tuned for the next part of the series on art commissions, where I talk about some of the nitty-gritty once you're actually doing commissions, like how to manage your workload and keep track of messages, that sort of thing. If you have any advice on how to write policies and contracts, please state your law credentials in the comments so we know what we're working with. For example, my comment would look like this. I'm not a lawyer, but my mom was a legal secretary in the 90s, and I played a lot of solitaire on her work computer after school. That's all true, by the way. Again, why I reiterate that this video is not sound legal advice. It's just some artist trying to do the thing being like, here, this is what I do. I don't know. I hope it helps. Anyway, bye. Thanks for watching. Chase your dreams. And that bread. Love you. Peace. Hey, did you know that I got my first ever comic published? It's called Far Away, and it's an 8-page comic about feeling lost and disconnected and trying to find your way back. It was published in the Summer 2019 Oneshi Press comic anthology, and if you'd like to pick up a signed copy that features my comic and a dozen other comics, there's a link in the description, and it comes with a free postcard.